Good morning, my beautiful friends. This is your wake up call with Maui Paul. I am Maui Paul. We are here today to say some nice things about ourselves. I want to say thank you guys so much for coming, for being here. Looks like I have quite the crew here today. Looks like good morning, Brenda Jean. Good morning, Shauna. Good morning, Dan. Good morning, let's see, Janet. It's good to see you today. Good morning, Lauren. Let's see who else is around here and has comments. It looks like that's about all the comments. I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. It is a lovely Tuesday, but freezing freaking cold. Let me tell you, Brenda Jean wants to go do a cold plunge somewhere between 11 a.m. and noon. And boy, let me tell you, I'll bet the water is cold today. Yeah, I see frost outside on the car, frost on the windows. Definitely a nice chilly day here in paradise. Anyway, I want to say thank you guys again for being here. Let's have some fun today. Let's pull some cards off the top of the deck. I am continuing to work with my physical version of my I am cards. These physical versions are so nice to have in my world. I'll be honest with you, every time that I take the I am card, or every time that every time that I pull one in the morning, I actually take the I am card and I literally put it right here on my desk. So just like like yesterday was the I am expansive card, and it is literally right here in my space, which is super cool. So anyways, we're going to pull a card off the top of the deck. I'm going to ask you if you are the affirmation on the card, and then we're going to say together out loud, I am that affirmation. As we do that, we are really reprogramming ourselves, and that is the goal, is really to reprogram ourselves and to respond differently to situations. Oftentimes, the responses that we have to situations in life are just really they are essentially in-baked responses, and these responses are oftentimes they're from childhood. So we will have, the way that we respond to things is the way that we first responded when we were a kid. And let's face it, we don't necessarily let kids run the world. So why on earth are we letting our own inner child run our world? So yeah. Once again, I'm going to pull a card off the top of the deck. I'm going to ask you if you are the affirmation on the card, and we are going to say together out loud, I am. And so let's have some fun today by saying that today, I am clever. I am clever. My solutions are creative and original. So I am clever. My solutions are creative and original. Are you clever? You are clever. Your solutions are creative and original. And I'm going to write that down in the comments today. And I encourage you to write down the same exact thing, that as we affirm today that we are clever and that our solutions are creative and original. And I was thinking about, like, when was a time in my life when I really felt like I was doing something in a clever way, where I had really applied a creative solution to my to my issue, to a problem that I had. And there are just, man, there's a whole lot of them, but it's very interesting, because as I think about them, to me, they don't really seem all that clever. To me, they seem very obvious. And the only reason I know that they're clever is because the people around me have told me that they're clever. But one of the fairly clever things I think that I've done in my, I guess maybe let's just focus this on career for right now, is that when I was working with the Hawaii Fudge Company, one of the ways that I brought the, essentially I was responsible for bringing, for driving revenue at our flagship store. I was the manager of the flagship store, and my job was to drive revenue. And there's only so much revenue that can be driven on an island where there's just, only certain amount of tourists. And, obviously the Hawaii Fudge Company was very much focused on serving the tourist market. And at the time, I knew that I had to break into other markets in order to meet my own revenue goals. And so what I did was I developed this fudge making class. I was like, well, how can I lean into my own talents and abilities? And so I developed this fudge making class, which was really of just a fairly basic, like make your own fudge kind of a thing. And I taught people how to make fudge. But more importantly, they would walk out of the fudge making class with 2 pounds of fudge, which was like a $72, basically like a $72 value. Of course, it wasn't that much to us because there's a lot of profit in fudge. But primarily, my job was to get them into the store. And rather than running it just for the tourists, I mean, I did run it for the tourists, but rather than doing that, I actually started to invite the human resources teams for the resorts and the buying teams for the resorts out to my fudge making class just for free. And I would basically just turn it into a little bit of a corporate team building event. Be like, hey, come on out and get 2 free pounds of fudge, and just meet a local business owner. And my goal, of course, was to get my fudge into their resorts, because while we would be getting we would get traffic of maybe 200 people walking by every day that would stop in and buy something. The resorts typically had rooms in the thousands. And so my goal is like, well, how can I get a piece of fudge on all their pillows? How can I get my fudge into their store? How can I increase our attraction and make it so that even if they're not necessarily buying fudge at the resort, maybe when they see our store out on the street, they're reminded of the fact that they've also seen our label somewhere else. And so I turned it into a fun event for the people, the teams of buyers for the resort, and or for the resorts on Maui. And I was able to actually start working with some of the really big name brands that you would probably recognize if I told them to you. And I thought that was a fairly clever solution, and it was a way of getting myself out there without necessarily, not only did it wasn't particularly expensive to bring these people in there and do this. And at the same time, we were able to generate a tremendous amount of business from it. And so I am clever, and my solutions are creative and original. And when I look at my life, I recognize that oftentimes the reasons that I do things are very different than the reasons that the people around me do things. So oftentimes when I'm pursuing a course of action, it's because there is some other motive on the back end that I'm way more interested in accomplishing. So I am clever. My solutions are creative and original. And this really ties back to a concept called second order thinking. So second order thinking is all about understanding the consequences of an action and then the consequences of those consequences. And so first order thinking is cause and effect. I do this, I get that. And most people in the world know about first order thinking, and most people who do critical thinking, and critical thinking I found in this world is becoming a more of a rarity, I think. But the folks who do critical thinking and understand how to critically think oftentimes do what's called first order thinking. They think about a cause, and then they think about the effect. If I do this, I'm going to get that. And anybody who's ever played chess will tell you that a good chess player can think more than one move ahead. They can think 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 moves ahead. In fact, the greatest computer chess players are good at playing chess. The chess algorithms that are run by a computer are good at playing chess because they can look thousands and thousands of moves ahead and know exactly what the best move is in any given situation. And so, so essentially, second order thinking is about thinking about the consequences of the consequences. And very often when I look back at my life and I see that I had a solution that was different than what the people around me are coming up with, it was usually because I'm looking at the consequences of the consequences, not necessarily just looking at the consequences. And so that's a good way to be clever, because when we are thinking 2 moves ahead, then we are already 1 move ahead of the people who are just thinking 1 move ahead, and we are 2 moves ahead of the folks who are not thinking at all. And so let's just do that today. Let's think about, hey, if this happens, what's going to happen? If I do this, what am I going to get? And if I get that, what are my options? And so if we just follow that mental framework through the major decisions that we make today, and we all make major decisions every single day. But if we follow this to its logical conclusion, we'll kind of come up with solutions that are clever without really trying to be clever. They're going to be thought of as clever by the people around us, who only saw that very first cause and effect, but didn't look at the second one, or even maybe even the third one. So I am clever today. My solutions are creative and original. Let's see here. So. Oh, Shauna still has her cards on the ceiling. That's super cool. That was a clever solution to make sure it's the first thing in your world, huh, Shauna? That you are creative and original. And those are creative and original solutions. Let's see here. I know that the cards that Shauna actually has on her ceiling are the ones that you can just write down your own affirmation on, which I think are super cool. The deck that I created actually contains a couple of those. Um, let's see here. Yeah. So Brenda Jean says the solution this week is put a spare walker in the pool for the cold plunge. Today, tie a string around it so it doesn't fall over when I drop it into 4 feet of water. A good plan. Definitely a good plan, Brenda Jean. And Janet says, I really get bogged down in all that thinking stuff, so I rely heavily on my intuition, and all areas of my life have improved in my faith in myself and the universe. You know, Janet, not everybody thinks in words. A lot of people think in feelings. And this is something that psychologists have only recently come to an understanding of through a whole lot of talking to folks. People with an internal narrative that they can hear that actually comes through in the form of words. That's actually not the way that everybody thinks. And because of that, the folks who just think in feelings are going to have a different experience. And so while I describe the thinking process with words, that doesn't mean that my thinking process always happens with words. My thinking process sometimes happens with feelings as well. And in that case, I'm always just reaching for the feeling that feels most right for me. But that's not necessarily something that's repeatable. That's not necessarily something that we can teach other people to do. We can definitely teach people to recognize how to feel into the feelings that are most right for them. But it is definitely more helpful when explaining how to do this sort of stuff to explain it using words and to explain it using as if everybody has an internal narrative that they can hear. But I recognize that not everybody does. Not everybody does have an internal narrative that they can hear. Some people only have an internal narrative they can feel, and because of that, it's just really valuable to just recognize our differences and the fact that our differences are something that really make us stronger because we are all intuiting differently. And I can tell you that some of the best decisions I've ever made have been made entirely on an intuitive feeling, and I didn't have any good logical reason for doing the thing. I just felt like it really needed to be done, so I did it. And most cases, it turned out really well. So thanks for that perspective, Jan. I understand also that the feeling space that we live in as we go through life is a very important one. And if you think about it, the logical ways that the logical gymnastics, the mental gymnastics that we go through are typically to justify how we already feel. They don't define the way that we feel. They help us to justify and understand the way that we feel. And if you don't need to understand the way that you feel, if you're just searching for that solid feeling, then it's okay to not necessarily put it into words. As long as your life is proceeding in accordance with your values and the way that you want to live, then why are words necessary? But words are necessary for explaining it, which is why I explain it like that. So I want to say thank you guys again for being here. It is always lovely to see you. I will return tomorrow at 9 a.m. and we will go through yet another one of these I am cards. I really appreciate it, man. It just warms my heart. I was going through Facebook yesterday because I was working on I was working with a client's Facebook stuff, and so my Facebook feed happened to be active, and I started scroll holing because Facebook is really good at getting you to do that. And as I did, I'd seen like 4 or 5 people shared the wake up call, and man, it just warmed my heart. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you sharing this with your friends, thinking it's valuable enough to put it on your feed. Y'all are amazing. I will return tomorrow with another wake up call. And yeah, we're going to continue to say nice things about ourselves. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Let's have a day where we come up with clever, innovative, creative, original solutions. And as we do that, we are going to find that our lives proceed in an even more amazing way. So until we speak again, from paradise.